Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. I'm your host, Christine Devlin Eck. Here at the Center for Sacred Window Studies, we explore and expand on conscious postpartum care. We navigate the overlap of caring for others and caring for ourselves. We honor the transitions, not only in giving birth, but in being alive. Welcome to the conversation.
And I will never be the same again.
Hello, welcome. I'm Christine Eck from the Center for Sacred Window Studies. I am back here with the beautiful Lauren Pick, who is so many wonderful things. She is a therapist. She is a movement dance instructor. She's a mama. She is a caregiver. She is really just an inspirational person who has a lot to give in terms of helping people find, I guess, our own sense of balance with who we are and what we're dealing with in this world. And I'm just really glad that you came into our sphere and our community. And when I learned that Lauren had this very special gift of supporting people through style choices and also their home style choices, I was really, really eager to have this conversation with her because it's something I've always felt so deeply, and nothing that I've ever been able to talk with someone about as a form of therapy. And I really think that medicine is everywhere, right? Like medicine is in what we do, what we look at, what we take into our bodies, how we talk, how we connect with each other. It's in all the things. And so why not be intentional with how we want to make our spaces medicinal, especially if we're in the caregiving sphere, and especially if we want to feel great ourselves. So, Lauren, please feel free to expand on that introduction, and also just to dive in whatever you've brought for us to think about and get excited about today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Christine. And I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the interest in navigating something that I think affects us all probably more than we're aware of. And yet when it's there, meaning that when we do feel supported, there is a synergistic, there is a locking in that can happen that can be created, but could actually be intentional. And so, especially as we are creating magic for people, this is an aspect that can be incorporated kind of seamlessly in a way. And even to the point that, because I was thinking of how to take this knowledge and to actually bring it into someone's home when it is not your home. And there are ways for that in a similar way of, I'm thinking of a children's book I had read the other night, where there's a babysitter was coming to the house and they had this bag full of babysitting gear. And it was all very simple things, but made for a great experience. And I think the same thing could happen here.
Yeah, I think about like my doula suitcase, like when I first did birth doula training. One of the things that they had us do was like fill a suitcase, and it was like the birth bag, and it was like the little thing, like all the things that we would bring into the hospital room or the home or wherever the birth was taking place. And it was like our way of like setting the space for healing.
Yeah. So just getting, but I'm curious about, and I know we have two people online right now. I don't know if they're interested in sharing, but just curious what having this home edition idea, just curious what the interest is so that I can speak to it. If there is something that drew you right to this idea. And I heard a little bit, Christine, from you, but curious if you have anything else to add, or if Alexa or Renew, if you have anything. What's the interest in intentional home for you?
I, I think about like my doula suitcase, like when I first did birth doula training. One of the things that they had us do was like fill a suitcase, and it was like our way of like setting the space for healing. Yeah, I think about like my doula suitcase, like when I first did birth doula training. One of the things that they had us do was like fill a suitcase, and it was like our way of like setting the space for healing. And feel free to put things into the chat too, if that's better for you. I think for me, it's really just getting curious about um, matching, our unique personalities with like ways that we can make choices about spaces to complement that. We're always looking at the elements in Ayurveda, and so it's, we become used to thinking about, oh, well, I have this type of constitution, and therefore this type of food is really supportive for me, or this type of routine. And so just kind of transferring that idea into physical spaces.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, and that is something that a little later on I will touch on, is that personalization, because I do think that can make it feel more authentic and feel it hit home, rather than be the whatever you would see in a magazine as far as to create a healing environment, right? Yeah, yeah. So I guess the first thing that I wanted to bring up and just kind of bring to awareness, in terms of, and if you're interested in this event, this may be something that, talking to the choir, but this idea of why space matters. And I just kind of wrote a list of different kind of variety of places, and with this invitation of, we talked about clothing last time, and how, clothing to match where we are at, but also when you think about very different places, and you tune into how the body feels around them, it often will go all over the map if you're sensitive to it, right? The sense of, oh, I need to be stiffer here. I need to, or this begs for relaxation, or in this environment, I have to be this certain way. So what I wanted to do for this is just to take a moment, and I had a list of like 6 or 7 things, different places. These are random, these first things that randomly came to my brain in terms of places in the world. And as I say these items, if the invitation would be to tune into what that place association is, how it helps you to feel in your body, and just notice this motion of zigzagging across the emotional landscape map. So if you were to think, and just imagining yourself in these places, it's not a big deal. It's just to notice the shifting. Imagining yourself at a dollar store, a Dollar Tree, getting whatever little thing it is, breathing that in, and the next moment you're at a church or a synagogue or a mosque. Notice the shift there, and how you may feel, or how you are presenting yourself might shift. And then you skip over to a basketball court. Notice any change in stimulation, any sense of how that might shift for you next you're going to the DMV. After that, you're taking a trip to the beach in the lake house. The airport terminal comes next. Oh, goodness gracious, you ended up at grandmother's house. And then to end your journey on Wall Street. So in the zigzag of the places, and if there was this piece, it just curious to get any sense of that shift, of that experience, but most important, that there is a zigzag, because without there hasn't been a time where because I'll often, with clients, kind of shift in between to show place. We use a shift from like, well, if you were here versus at a church, or here versus at a dollar store. People can get that instantaneously. And to realize that all of those different things, there's a variety of things that help us shift in that map, but some of them we have quite a bit of control over. This isn't just this is something that when you bring intention to it, you actually have we actually have more control than we realize to create whatever it is we want to create. These environments have certain intentions and certain reasons behind it, and then the environment is created to match it. And so it's to recognize, so then there can be this fascination, right? As I move throughout my life, ooh, what do I like about being in this environment, and how was that created? Curious, Christine, what happened as you shifted and played with that?
Yeah, well, it's so interesting because some of them they're like pretty immediate like shifts that happened. A lot of it had to do with like the energy level there, uh,
Mm,
the
sure.
spaciousness versus the frenetic,
Mm,
sort of frantic feelings,
mm, mm, mm.
um, or like the ability to be like present and connecting
Sure.
versus like people just ignoring each other, you know? So I think, but also then I was thinking of like the things that can be controlled, and a lot of it was like the lines, like the curves or the straight edges of lines for some
Mm,
reason
mm,
felt
mm,
like
mm, mm, mm.
um yeah, that was kind of an interesting observation.
Yeah, the elements of the energy and how it's coming in. Yeah, yeah. Um, and so one of the things that I got curious about, and this might be something that happens later or in, someone's own, in their mind, in their world. But as we come to do this work as postpartum doulas, there's this idea kind of universally. We're coming to this. The two words that came up for me was help. We're coming to a helping profession and a healing profession, and then what are the other adjectives that you're wanting to create for clients? You're helping, you're healing. What else are you doing? Um, and do you have a certain flavor, I guess, is what I would be curious to, like, what's the flavor you're wanting to give? And it could be based on your dosha, it could be based on your own medicine, basically, right? What is it that I'm wanting to give? And for anyone that can see what's behind me, I'm in my therapy office and what I'm wanting to give. Oh, I see. It says taking on a different consciousness, and also how the play of air, earth, and fire element comes into play in different spaces. Oh, yes. Yeah, very much so. Yes, you can see that. That's beautiful. You can see the elements there. But if anyone can see the room behind me, it's my therapy room. I'm noticing my scarf, but everything else is my therapy room. And for me, the word is soothing. That is that's what I always want, is a soothingness, a sense. I always do this image of petting my hair, petting my head for clients. That's what I'm trying to do for them. I always want to pet them, trying to soothe them. Fundamentally, that's me. I mean, that's what I'm attempting to bring, and that's what I want reflected back. And so I think for me, at least, that distinction has been invaluable, other than just I want to help people, I want to heal people, beautiful, beautiful, kind of as a foundation. Now, what's my flavor? Um, so curious, Christine, if there's any word that pops for you or anyone else here on the call.
Like
What?
the first word that came up for me was like I want to empower them.
Yeah.
And I think that's like over the long run, but when I was listening to you use that word soothe, like ultimately in the moment when someone is in the postpartum window, in that immediate moment, which feels like survival in a lot of ways,
Mm,
I want them to feel mothered and
sure.
like they can relax, like they are soothed, like, and then it's almost like the empowerment I want to come in like beforehand, and then like as they're leaving that kind of really intense few first weeks and they're moving out, then it's like I want to shift to being like, I got this, I can do this,
Yeah.
I'm okay and I'm doing a good job,
Mm,
I know my baby. Like that is what I want. But I realized just now listening to you that it's different at different stages.
mm. I got the image you said empowered. For my association is yellow for some reason. I'm imagining these yellow threads going through the soothing, or like these elements that can come in, which is I mean, to me, that's a beautiful flavoring, right? You're kind of like nuancing. I'd say that's like fine wine, right? We nuance these things into the flavors. So, as terms of personalization, one thing I do personally in my practice, and one thing that I think helps I think sometimes people are afraid to put their fingerprint on things, to put their signature on things. When in reality, when you do that, you actually draw your kind of client to yourself. So the more like people come in, they either hate or love what's behind you. They either hate it or love it. And if they hate it, hello. And if they hate it, they don't usually comment, or when they come in, I can sense they're kind of stiffening, or where am I, or this is not like a therapy room. This is very, very different. This is actually all from a living room from a previous house. So it's very, very my style. Or they absolutely melt when they come in here. Their shoulders relax. They tell me, oh my, thank you. Oh, and I know immediately I'm drawing the type of client that is mine into myself. So that can be a very powerful self-inquiry of, the more I become comfortable in who I am, but what I find to be my flavor. If my word is soothe, like what is soothing to me? That's what's behind you. That's what you see is soothing to me. Well, my kind of client will also find this soothing, if that makes sense. So there can be something really, really powerful around claiming yourself, claiming what you truly love. And that can be through a variety of ways. I mean, this is a little bit wider in how I'm talking right now, but this could be in the paper. If you had a business card, this is just an example. If you had a business card, the paper and the logo, if you chose to have that, or if you had some kind of website, or you had like, it's everything in the font. We're talking anything in terms of design. You draw that into yourself, because this is all design, right? Draw that into yourself, and you actually put your fingerprint on it, put your stamp. Your kind of client is more likely to come because they are also drawn to those symbols and those textures and those flavors. Yeah.
And I think what brings it up for me as I'm listening to you too is like the permission that we don't have to be the exact right person for everybody. Like we will be our most effective if we consider, what is soothing to you as the caregiver, and then those are the people who are naturally going to be most benefited by our support versus trying to feel like we have to be everything for everybody.
It allows for being genuine. So it's a lot easier to sell a product, and the product, whether it's what we are doing or us ourselves, if it is coming from a place of expansion. This is just my heart extended outward. What you see behind is just my heart extended outward. It's nothing that I went into an office, office max, and said, I need furniture for my office. It's like, no, this is an extension of me. So you walk in here and you like what you see, you probably are more likely to like me. It's all kind of woven. So so into the practical, how do I begin to do that if that's totally new territory? The thing I invite people to do, a little more difficult now in our digital age, it can be done digitally. Invite people to go to places like Barnes and Noble, go into like they have magazine sections, and flip through and just take pictures. The reason for that, rather than doing an internet search, is internets are to find something specific. Magazines can surprise you. So when you flip through things that you might not have thought of to draw yourself in, you're actually the magical is more likely to come to you. Now, you can also type in, soothing environments or whatever you're trying. That's the word I'm using, but whatever word you're trying to use, and see what comes up. Obviously, you could do it either way. Start to collect images that evoke whatever it is you are wanting to give to your clients beyond helping them and healing them. That makes your own heart sing. That would be so you're creating your own medicine for yourself by extension. Yeah, so much easier to sell that product than, oh, I have to create something outside of here for someone, and I don't know if I can do it. Yeah. Yeah. Curious, and so I wanted this to be a bit of a conversation, and we'll see how much kind of conversation we can get around it. But people's experiences around being in a supportive environment and how they knew it was supportive versus an unsupported environment in terms of the kinds of things we were talking about. When I say being in a supportive environment or unsupportive environment, where does the mind go in terms of immediate associations? And then if there's any kind of conversation around that, I'd be curious. what pops? Supportive environment or unsupportive environment?
Um, I can try. So it just feels like when the environment is really sterile, it's really hard to puncture that boundary of feeling supported or not supported. So I find that as healers in alternative medicine, we really might have to think about how to engage the five senses. And as an individual practitioner, I mean, I find also touching, is it's just something natural and intuitive for me. I mean, as my background is in touching a lot of people, so for me, it's really easy to do that. But I also feel like I need to really read the room and understand if this person is ready to receive that touching and nurturing and so forth. So I've been tapping a little bit more into intuition. And just to share a small example, I'm actually getting some treatment for an injury myself. And I've been working with this person who is sort of doing the medical, basically I'm getting some ultrasound treatment for my injury on my foot, but is also a massage therapist. And I didn't know that about her, but just the way she was touching and coddling and all of that. And so I just, like, at the second or third treatment, I said, oh, you really have a healing touch and so forth. And so we started engaging in that. I mean, she felt very open to just being able to, like, for example, she was like coddling my foot as she was doing the treatment. And I've been to places where it's just like the unit and you, right? So I don't know, for me, touch is a big invitation for breaking that boundary. And then anything else that would engage the five senses. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but just to.
I love what you just said about, like, at the end there, like engaging the five senses. And I really think that's it. It's like when people pay attention to how we're responding to our environment with our senses. And it feels to me like it doesn't take much, but just the attention on what someone will experience with, what they smell, what they see, what they hear, what they touch, how they sit down, how are they comfortable. And then of course, like, the intention of the person who's hosting the space, or who's like sort of helping to facilitate the space for that person. It just is so reflective of the understanding of Ayurveda as involving, like, balance of all of the senses and all the elements, paying attention to that. It's like a really fun roadmap to follow, it feels like.
Yeah, that's the nuggets in a way. The kind of thing to keep in the forefront. And I love what you said about touch, because yes, in terms of support, right? How much can we more literally, quite literally, support someone than with our own, our own presence, our own touch. It's very beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Curious if there's any other either example of when an environment has felt unsupportive or felt supportive in a way that just kind of landed, or just kind of I knew it was here kind of immediately. Curious what else is popping.
There was a space in my town that I used to go to receive prenatal care. They had office spaces there, and they had kind of a warm sitting area when you walked in, with a little shop full of, everything that, a new family with a baby could possibly need. And then there was like a little room off to the side where at some point I was facilitating a new mom circle there for a while, and they would have yoga classes and things. But the way that this place was designed, in particular, I'm thinking of the bathroom, because it was this, potentially just big, empty square with a toilet and a sink and a changing table. But they had brought in this artist who had painted it so beautifully and had all these poems and like phrases written all over the walls. And so when you would be in there, and part of the visit was me, taking a little pee stick and doing my glucose and doing all the things, weighing myself, and then I would go back and report. So I was in that bathroom like a good amount of times during my pregnancies. And I just, I loved that space because it was just filled with loving affirmations and things that spoke to my heart.
Beautiful. Making notes as you're giving me other ideas to talk about. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's reminded me, so I had a client once that was an OBGYN, and I was talking to her. She was coming from this holistic perspective in a town and a part of the country that isn't particularly holistic. And talking to her, it just came up one session around the sterile environment in doctor's offices. You're using sterile word, and we're supposedly healing, right? We're in this healing environment, and yet talking about the senses, our senses are actually underwhelmed, understimulated. There is this sense of what's wrong here. This doesn't feel teeming with life, which is wonderful to keep out germs, perhaps, but in terms of soothing. And I played a little bit with her of what she owned her own business, and just in very simple ways and hygienic ways and ways that she could to help soothe. And so even in environments that might not traditionally, send our heart fluttering, what are ways that could very simply begin to engage a little more sense of wonder, magic, awe, this sense of, again, the opening the ethers, like the comment kind of opening here. It's beautiful. So I wanted to kind of play, like get in the weeds. I kind of wanted to play a bit with some more specifics and things that could actually be packed up into a bag if you're wanting to help create a bit more of an environment. If you were going into someone's home, obviously, if you had a certain space people were coming to, it'd be a little bit different conversation. But yeah, exactly. Engaging the senses. And when I think of the major one, and I don't know if this is just my own, how much of this is my own stuff with this. And perhaps you can let me know if there's others that seem to pop bigger for you. When I think of the number one thing that can set a mood, it's lighting. It is the light that takes into the room. In my own clients, like it's what you see behind me is all natural light. If I can, Nebraska doesn't always allow for that. We have very dark mornings and lots of clouds at times. But depending on the time of day, usually, I mean, our nervous system, everything is usually feels some release and relaxation when the lighting is as nature intended. That is not a hard rule. It's just, I would say, play with that. I have clients, so I do have an overhead fluorescent light. If I was to put it on, my clients shriek. They're so used to the lighting in here. They absolutely not. Yet all the other offices up and down this hall, that's what they have. They just get so accustomed to coming in here, and there's natural light on the days that there is not enough light, because that happens quite often here, especially in the winter. A variety of lamps. So indirect lighting can be actually very soothing to clients. What I found versus an overhead light. The clients in your homes, they might already have lamps. They might be in a place where they don't, it's easier just to flip on the overhead light because there's so much chaos going on. If they have lamps, you might invite and just see if they're okay with using them, and using a variety of them, especially in the place where they spend a lot of time. Some people are more sensitive to that. They want that bright light, and that's okay. But I would invite becoming a little more attuned to how lighting affects. Know that there are lots of different kinds of light bulbs you can get. That's not really what I'm talking. There's a whole range, and you can kind of play with that if you're interested. I remember in my own world coming here, I think in Nebraska, the Midwest, thinking there wasn't enough light and playing a lot with daylight bulbs. And meeting someone one day that said that, why are you doing this? This is horrible. Your light, all the light in your house is very, very bright. And it took me getting used to the idea that if I was inside, maybe some softer light could help. Like getting used to this how it felt in my body and how the different spectrum of color affects. So just all of that to say, when you enter the room with someone and you're wanting to create health, healing, perhaps soothing or some variation, look around and see what they already have to create more indirect light, I would say, more natural light. That is generally if we're edging towards, but also I've said tune into yourself and see what feels good in terms of what you're trying to bring. In terms of the element like empowerment, I'm thinking like there might be times where that bright overhead light or even a daylight light is like what is needed to move forward, right? In terms of what you could bring in a little bag to kind of aid that, other than walking into someone's room and just seeing, okay, do they have any lamps I could turn on? How could that help? Do they have, shades I could pull up? There are, I love pink lights, these little salt lamp pink lights. You could bring one if you wanted. I don't know if some people have them. They're quite heavy, but they do sell, and I do not get anything for this, but I found these to be very useful. They are little night lights that are pink lights that are have salt lamp plug-in night lights. They are very tiny, and I didn't bring mine. I have them all over my house. I don't have one here because I don't do night stuff here, but I have like 30 of them in my house. They're in every outlet all around my house, but they are, I don't know, 4 inches tall. I got them on Amazon. They're salt lamps, but they're just little plugins immediately. And you don't need very many of them. I use one in my bedroom at night if I'm nursing a baby, and it just gives this beautiful glow. The nervous system is usually pretty soothed. And then throughout my house is just me personally, I will put them in different places. So if my children wake up in the middle of the night, we have lights in the house, but it's just very soothing. Everyone that I've shown these to absolutely love them because they aren't the big heavy lamps. If you have them, that's great, and you want to bring them to, that is also its own thing, and it is beautiful. It's just for practicality. These are really really lovely. Other things are a little bit messier that aren't as quite in vogue, but in certain spiritual communities and things, they'll say they're beautiful lights as well. Oil lamps can be lovely. They're a little more messy. Clients might not have them. You might not have them. In a lot of the meditation world that I'm involved in, they really, really like that instead of electric lights. So just kind of maybe that is something you want to bring in and you want to have that upright or something. That can obviously set a mood. The infamous candles definitely set a mood. I often, especially in gloomy mornings, I will put on a candle. There's a candle right now in my office. When clients come in and a candle is lit, they change immediately. Something shifts for them. It's almost like they look around the room, like, did I say a prayer and do a ritual before they came? The answer is yes, but they have this feeling of like, oh, I'm in sacred space now, sacred window. Like, oh, there is something. It's this pulling. So I would not underestimate, although it might feel cliche, I would not underestimate a candle and one of those little things that light candles very quickly, the little torch or whatever that you can just zip on. Also, while being mindful that you have a very sensitive new mama, and a high quality candle with not a lot of scents that are natural would be ideal, simply because you don't want to unintentionally irritate, the nervous system. So simple things. So lighting as a big kind of overarching idea, just as a review, going in, seeing what's available, if you're wanting to bring something, the little pink lights like I talked about, oil lamps, maybe candles, those things can be easy, can be transported to help create the space. But you'd be surprised. Most people have lamps, they don't use them. They have shades, they don't open them. So that in my view, and you might, as I bring up other ideas, you might have other thoughts, but that in my view is the number one thing that can create space. If you want to connect to the light, if you want to connect to some, we talked about the air of, these in those comments, the play of air, earth, fire elements, these ethers. I mean, it's connecting to me to this element of light. Curious if there are any thoughts or any feedback from that or anything that anyone's thinking of in terms of light.
I think it could be amazing as a conversation to have with our clients if we are lucky enough to work with them before their babies arrive, of just how space can be set up as a healing element in itself, and finding out what they have. Like maybe they have a number of candles and little night lights. Maybe we want to put those things on, like, your preparation list or something. But I also just love the conversation of when you feel like you need to be soothed, if you're in a moment of stress, what do you do? And because I'm the same, Lauren. I have a candle that I usually light in my office every single day. And to me, it creates a sense of sacredness for what it is that I'm doing. It tells me that I'm nourished by my space. And to be able to give people a little heads up, like as a caregiver, I'm looking at the ways that you are being cared for on all the levels. And that includes how I move through your space and how I arrange your space for the healing things. So you might see some candles, you might see some essential oils or something, you might see me bring in this or that, and giving them a little heads up. I think then when it happens, they're like ready to receive it as a healing, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a little healing accelerator or something. Yeah, that's what comes up for me.
Getting permission is what I'm hearing. Make sure you get permission, but yeah. I hear the yeah, that's true though. I mean, it's true, especially
Yeah, that is a thing too, so that they're not like, what's going on here?
Well, and also to sense into what could be too much or not, just kind of sensing into that. The next thing that pops for me is textile. If there's any, we talked about this a bit in the last time as far as fabrics that feel good. There might be, kind of the obvious association of how can we soothe with textiles. I had a kind of as a play to that, and this would be an add-on, something you could put into a bag. That may or may not be something you're interested in, but just as an idea. So when I remember when I first started going to massages when I was in high school, and I remember it was coming around Christmas time, and my massage therapist, and I didn't realize how sweet it was at the time. I didn't know what, she was a very lovely woman. She worked out of her home, and for Christmas she had made these, and it's very simple put together, but a neck pillow. It was it's just like a little tube essentially that she filled with rice or something that had a cover on it, and an eye pillow, and they matched, and they were lovely. And I was so touched. I still have these items. It was so touched that it was kind of this first time that if someone that I thought was healing was kind of giving me this tangible reminder to relax, and here is how I could do it. Lay on your back, Lauren, support your neck, soften your eyes, right? So it was this tangible reminder, to soothe. That might not be appropriate or interesting for everyone to do. This woman had made them very simply. They were handmade. not everyone might have the skills to do that. You obviously could purchase them as well. Do you want to add that cost? It's an idea. It's a way to add that idea of textile. It's very simple, especially with some kind of introduction to it, just like any of this stuff. It could send this message of it's okay to relax, it's okay to unwind. I've got you, especially when, of course, it could incorporate scents in that element too. So you have your lights, you have your textiles, or any thoughts there? I can continue to shift or move through other stuff. Just curious.
I've actually been given that too, not the neck one, but an eye pillow. And honestly, like it was a while ago now, but literally every time I use it, I keep it next to my bed.
Yep.
I I think of that person and I think of getting that care. So it's
Yep.
like this ongoing association of someone inviting me to be rested and loved.
Yeah, it's almost this transmission in a strange way if you take it to be that. So it could be that. Yeah. Weighted blankets, obviously. I have 2 weighted blankets in my office. Your clients may or may or may not want to carry that. That's just another way you could add the textile piece. Essential oils we kind of talked about briefly in just this conversation. Very easy to do room sprays with that. You could do DIY room sprays. Finding ahead of the time a client's preference. You could leave it with the client, or you could just be something you bring in and bring out. I've had people make these little very simple room sprays that are almost these testers. They're not very big. They're only, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 inches. This is an herb bottle, but I mean, just tiny. It is even smaller, maybe 3/4 the size. Doesn't have very much. It's almost just this little tester. Give it away. I've seen them given away at like yoga events or different things. That can just be another little thing if you wanted to put in, help them create the space. What this can start to do, by the way, is it talked about ritual, sense of just doing the same thing to create a space. Okay, every day when I'm getting into my nest, I turn on my light, I light my candle, I spray my room spray. It starts to create new layers of kind of being able to nest in. So these pieces, lighting, textile, scents. This next one kind of might feel like a dull one, but was a bit of a lifesaver in my own postpartum hell that I feel like I went through because it's so easy to forget. And many pregnant women. It was. That's why I'm here, Christine. That's why I'm here. Many people might do this, for their birth, like for the actual birthing process. But to encourage clients or to have yourself create kind of these soothing, healing, specific, you can find them like already created in certain venues, but specific to you, musical playlists that really speak to you in terms of what is needed right now. There are, I have it if you're on Spotify. I was thinking I have lots of these playlists if you want to get started. It's under my husband's name instead of mine. His name is Dennis. If you go on Spotify, Dennis Pick, he'd be laughing. But I have like healing trauma playlists. I have these soothing playlists that could be a place to start. I'm not saying, I mean, if you could go many places with it. If you start to get into not just like playing meditation music or playing massage music, which can all kind of sound the same, like this, like it can be soothing, it can be wonderful, but there are some really lovely music with some really empowering lyrics, with some really uplifting pieces that can be extremely transformational in ways that not many other things can do. And at the time, I remember I was speaking to a woman, and it was very, life was tough in a lot of ways. And she looked at me and she said, "You can harness your mood once you put on the right music." I said, "Okay, she's talking to me, and I'm sitting here saying, I'm a psychotherapist, and you're telling me this, and this seems so simple, yet nothing I've ever considered." Right? You can harness if you get the right music on. And so We do this already kind of naturally, but you can do it really intentionally here with really great results. So I would say that might be something you've thought of. Don't underestimate it. I would encourage you to dig in it, and not just say, "Oh, I'm just going to put on some meditation music or some massage music and check." You can do that, but it's a huge fertile ground. The musical piece.
You know, it's so interesting because I feel like putting together a birth playlist is so much more common than
Yes.
putting together your healing playlist for postpartum. Like people just don't think about that. But like, just like, you know, and all things, like people aren't thinking about postpartum, but this is our invitation to think about it very intentionally. And I love the idea of putting together a healing playlist. Music is on all the time for me. It's just in my operating system. But I certainly did not put together that playlist for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, you've just opened a window for me. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an ongoing, especially things like when things so I will look up playlists that maybe have already been pre-created around like grief or loss and when things get tough. And oftentimes it will come with a lot of songs about pain or longing or not necessarily negativity, just people in pain. And it can be this kind of crafting of, can I find music that again gives me the flavor, soothes and uplifts, right? Gives this rather than just speaks to a pain point, which is a little different, right? And so it's distinguishing that. Something, I have a whole box of them. Something that can be really helpful. I'm actually holding one right now. Stones. Give people grounding stones. This fairly large, can fit into the hand. You don't have to, these can be, well, it'd be difficult to show you. I have one over here, but I have a big box of them. I specifically have, they're about this big. There's nothing special about this. If you're in a place like New England, you can go outside and get them. I have a whole box in my office, and I actually just took a golden Sharpie and wrote safe on them because I want my clients to feel safe. Put a word on it. What do you want for your clients? Like, what are you hoping to give them? Help to ground them. Or if you're trying to bring in calming the spata, like give them something to hold. You don't have to do that. In my own world, when I'm going through a lot, I have certain things that just holding it can help. They're going through a lot. Don't underestimate that. Beautiful. Another little pieces. I know we're getting kind of towards the end. I've got a couple more that I want to kind of buzz through, and then we can kind of talk any kind of takeaways or things. We kind of talk about this a lot already, especially when we're talking, food of postpartum. Think of the tea culture. It's been around for a long time all around the world. I love thinking about British people for some reason. There's a lot of British connection here in Nebraska for whatever reason. And the tea rituals daily of that warm liquid coming in to ground and soothe. If something feels off, can you offer a liquid and preferably something warm to someone? We do this already in our culture, but it's something that can be forgotten, especially in our very fast-paced lifestyle. Can I bring in warmth and liquid? Also food and treats. When I say treats, can you have things like chocolates, caramels, mints in your little baggie of things? It can just help people feel loved really quickly. I have candy dishes in my office. There'll be times I'll even dramatically when a client is, I don't know if this is whatever, but when a client tells me something particularly difficult, and there are times I will stand up. It is because it's coming from a true place, not theatrical. I will stand up, walk over to a candy dish, say, "I need some chocolate, do you?" And sometimes they take it, sometimes they don't. I don't care. I'm going to the chocolate dish not to because I want it, Sometimes they like it, sometimes they don't. But there can be something about this imbibing together in something, like it's something small. and just kind of like we're in this together. Like there's something to that. So that's another little piece that could be in your little bag if you wanted, as a way to kind of heal, soothe, ground. Other little pieces. So Christine, you kind of brought in for me when we talked about the room that had quotes or phrases. There are lots of books. They're a bit of coffee table books that are written now. They're not big like coffee table books, but they are they're kind of like have little wisdom to them. You might just, next time you're in the bookstore, see if there's some things that speak to you that are just wise. I have so many of them. There's a couple. There's one I have in my office and one I don't, but I can tell you both just to kind of get you started. Oh goodness, can I find this book? It's a tiny little book. Oh goodness, why can't I find it? It's a little coffee table. Well, this is one, the one I wanted. There's one that's called If the Whole World Could Know You. It's a very simple, tiny little book, and it's You'd Be Everyone's Favorite Person. And it's just very simple. It's almost like a child's book, but it's these little tiny feel good. I have another book, very similar size, very thin. It's like It's Okay to Feel Your Feelings. These are like adult children's books, if you will. They just say soothing phrases on each picture. This is If the Whole World Could Know You, you'd be everyone's favorite person. If everyone on the planet could meet you, they think you're wonderful. It's just it's basically affirmations in a children's book. There are books everywhere. Another book I love, it's called The Comfort Book. I think it's by Matt Haig, Haig. There's lots of books like this, like that are they're basically just like affirmative, soothing. Once you get into this world, you'll find that if you have your eyes out for them, think of just these coffee table soothing books. That you could gift to a client, you could read, you could have them come, just read a little bit of it. It is, again, it's this motion. It's just these words of it's all okay. The final thing I want to say, and then we can have this kind of taking any kind of takeaways from this. Very simple. I take this from the world of feng shui, which I love, love, love. Very simple. Take items off the ground. Depression loves ground. If you're feeling very depressed, you don't be surprised if your closet, it's mostly on the ground. Don't be surprised if suddenly your book bag is on the ground and things are on the ground. You might start actually quite feeling weighted down. For clients, just see it very simple. Can you quite literally pick stuff off the ground, but even things that could be on hooks, robes, purses, things that even if their purse is on the ground, can you just lift up and put it on top of the desk? Very simple things that can just elevate the space really easily, really quickly. Most people might not be attuned to it, but it really does shift things. Even if it's dirty laundry, pull the dirty laundry and put it up on the couch, not on the ground. Like just pull everything up just a little bit. That can be something very tangible. You need no items to do that. That's something you could do in a client's space with their permission, obviously, just to help elevate. Yeah. So some ideas, some things. I hope you got some practical things that you could take with you, or you have favorite things that maybe you can use right away or that you want to play with. I'm curious to hear any thoughts.
I love all of these things. And I love that they're very intuitive. I've started to do these healing circles with a couple of musicians, and I kind of sit in with them and sing with them. And one thing that my friend Joa does is she brings like card decks. Like there's like an herbal card deck, and each card has a little, herb with like a message on it or a meaning to it, and she invites people to take a card before each session. And so they'll sit with that, and it's like that's their little gateway to like find themselves a little bit more in that moment. And I never thought about how beautiful that would be to put in the doula bag and to have, and almost to just invite someone to have a card for the day that is, you got one. Yeah.
There's the Sacred Pregnancy Journey deck. This is lovely.
Oh, that's amazing.
Probably other ones, I don't know for things, but I love this woman, Annie Dalter. the sacred pregnancy woman. I don't know.
Beautiful. I wonder if someone has done one for new motherhood or
I don't know, but these pictures, I mean, it's all for any, I use this for all my client for any kind of transition. It's just transition stuff. Yeah, there's so many. Yeah. Beautiful. Oh, can I put in chat? Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I love that with decks and cards that can help to bring some hope too. For people to kind of um create a focus, create a message. Yeah, love that. Yeah, curious if there's any other pieces, or curious what someone's takeaway is, or what the thing is they think they can use right away. Listen, alter.
yeah, I think for me, the main thing that impacts my space, and this is also just a personality thing, but it's when I walk into my home and things are just not in the spaces where they're supposed to go. And I have 4 children, so this is a very common occurrence. But when I'm able to like get everybody together and we collectively spend 5 minutes and just put things in their homes, it's like putting all of the scattered pieces of myself back into their home. And so oftentimes in my doula practice, I will just do that for people a little bit. I don't spend a lot of time, but as I'm, moving through their kitchen, getting their snacks, I will just put things in their homes a little bit if I know where their homes are, wipe things down just so that surfaces are clean. And that to me just gives me permission to move inside or like be aligned in my inner world versus looking around me and seeing all the things that are not in alignment around me. That's pretty huge for me. And I knew that, and that was actually something that I was able to speak with my postpartum caregivers about, because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do that, go around my house and pick up the things that I knew were going to bother me if I was seeing all this. So I had pretty open discussions with my husband and my, mom, and I was like, I get really, I can't sit still if I feel like I need to pick things up. So help me to like not feel like I have to do that and maybe like anticipate so that things are just not tempting me to do. And also like a frank discussion with myself on like, let that go. You can let that go. You don't have to do that right now, and you're still okay.
Yeah, I love that. I love that having the conversation, especially if there are certain things that like it'd be really nice if this was put away. Uh, just give you permission if you see this, and letting them know where that home is that's something that could be wildly supportive in terms of feeling like things are in order. Yeah, and then also that let go kind of permission as well. Yeah.
I have a question, if it's a good time to talk about this. I was just curious if either of you have any rituals that you might engage in prior to actually touching the client, because I know we've engaged the senses, but we still haven't kind of crossed. We still have one more boundary, I feel, to cross. And I was just wondering if there are any rituals or anything you might do to kind of now say that you're entering their space. I was just curious if there was anything that you guys engage in.
Okay, you're asking for rituals as permission to touch, or to prepare your own body
to
touch?
prepare to touch, because we're talking about space, right? So we're talking about also now we're invading someone else's privacy and space, and I was just curious if there's something that you
Yeah.
start with
Yeah.
with clients.
Yeah. The first thing that comes up for me, which may or may not, and this comes from working as a healer and what do you do with the stuff? And it could also be used to prepare. It's to get into a sink, preferably a kitchen sink that is deeper, and allowing water to run down to the hands, but preferably from the elbow all the way down if you can. And this idea of clearing, you can do it before to prepare and especially after. And it helps if there's an intention, right? If you bring this kind of coming in of like, what are you clearing and cleaning for? I mean, there's a lot in terms of preparation for sacred space that I could say. That's one. There are other schools of thoughts that'll even talk about like physically being very energetically clean, where you're showered and bathed before you go into that person's home. The colors that you are wearing matters, and there's all sorts of different different nuances. But that piece, what I'm talking about, getting the kitchen sink and kind of not intentionally allowing the water to kind of clear and clean whatever it is to prepare the body would be the most direct, effective thing that I do. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I definitely, for me, Reinu, it's about just setting intention and clearing my own inner space. So I love, Lauren, the addition of like the actual act of washing the arms and hands. But even if I'm coming into a space and I'm not doing body work, or someone's coming into my space to receive support, it's really just about clearing my heart and mind and inner space to really be fully present for them. And then afterwards, being able to like quickly bless them on their journey and then kind of clear my space to enter back into my family and my world. So kind of the opening and the closing for me is really important in setting the intentions for how I want those to go.
Brenda says, clearing my heart and erasing my day and being present is my energy to enter another space.
Beautiful. I think that's so incredibly important. And to me, that is the difference between feeling sustained in the work that I'm doing and feeling burnt out or weighed down by the work that I'm doing. And if I can effectively make that an automatic part of the service, the care, it supports the entrance, it supports the moving forward from it. It contains it so that I can continue to hold it and do it and not feel weighed in any way.
I would be really curious to lay my hands on some of those techniques.
Yeah, well, I think it's really a very personal process. And I think, your experience with Ayurveda and mantra, for a lot of it for me is mantra. And so when people ask about meditation techniques, I feel like that's such a personal practice of what creates that opening in your heart, what creates that connection between source and our purpose. And so I have no doubt that like you have
I've been
already.
experimenting with just basically chanting and inviting healing and keeping it very on neutral grounds. That way people were basically looking to invite healing into this space. And yeah, that's but I was just like kind of curious. I do like this water, the ritual, just something to kind of, like Lauren mentioned about, like, you have your hacks, and that you can kind of layer them and create that, and it becomes a ritual for the client, but then also for yourself. So I was like looking for some hacks to kind of, do, because I think that regularity really calms our vata down as well. So having that ritual for myself is kind of something that I want to embark in, that I can kind of call my own. And I do love the water idea. I've already experimented with the chanting, but I also like what Brenda said about, yeah, because I don't know, I think we do carry a lot when we come in, and then we do carry out a lot too. So
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
No, I think it's like,
It's like a secret thing. I've tried asking people, but I think it's people are not like really open to kind of discussing this. And I'm like, wait a minute, like tell me what works. But I think what my answer now is like what works for them may not work for me. And I need to find my own, is kind of how I'm now looking at it, you know?
but it's also the process of finding that practice for you that is the discovery process.
Yes. Yeah.
That's where you know that it works, because you've
Yeah.
gone on the discovery journey.
Yeah.
You know, there's a million mantras, there's a million breath practices, there's a million prayers and songs, but
Absolutely.
you're the only one who knows what it feels in your heart and in your spirit when you like tap into the moment, and whatever tool or whatever brought you there, that moment is only to be experienced in that way by you. And I think that you've really, brought something so beautiful to the conversation, Renu, and that, like, earlier on you brought up the five senses, but this is like such a beautiful process to go through with our clients, and letting them know, like maybe inviting them, like when I'm about to begin a postpartum bodywork treatment for someone and they're on the table, I invite them to like think of a word or a phrase or a prayer or a like this. I invite you to find something for you that helps you to
I
feel
like that.
loved, and so I include them in that process too. And I think when we do that, like part of my philosophy is helping you to be cared for with all of your senses. And so let's partner together to create that for you. And then the implementing of all these tools in our spatial environments, it becomes like a gift that we give to them that they can continue to practice as we leave.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm laughing when you just simply because what I just told you, I've actually never said out because no one's ever asked me directly. And I'm thinking like it was told to me. I was like 17 years old in like a Sufi camp, and I tell this woman and she's whispering it to me, and I'm like, how funny. You're saying it's like this little hidden thing, and it feels like it a bit, right? Like
It is. Yeah.
why? Anyway.
Yeah, the only other small thing I wanted to add to, like, at least what I have directly experienced, is that, I know that, let's say, you took a personality test and you're supposed to be this cuddly, nurturing person, but, the opposite person may not necessarily receive that, including this engaging the five senses. Like I remember I just, this is my very first person that I worked with, even before I took the course. And I think Christine knows about that. And I just like intuitively decided like, oh, I need to carry some aroma and I need to carry this candle. And I packaged this beautiful bag, and this woman would not accept anything. She didn't want light. She didn't want aroma. Then I thought, okay, I even bought like a YouTube, no commercial free thing just for this experience. And she said, no music, no nothing. And I was just very disappointed at that time. And I was just thinking, and even this eye thing, people are so, now post COVID and all, like everyone is so like kind of sterile in their own space and environment, and I was very disappointed. But I think then I realized that I have to really separate what I want and what makes me relax from what the other person really wants and needs, in that hour at that time. So just separating ourselves, I think, is important. That's my takeaway from this conversation we had.
Yes, yes, and so what I would say to that is, I don't know. Obviously, I don't know because I don't know the situation. What comes up for me in that, could it be simply that you were able to see a possibility that she wasn't able to sense into yet? Many times when I work with clients, where I am ready or what I can see for them, it might take them 6 months to a year to even get close to it. So in our work, am I sensing into where they are at or where they could be, which might be way out here, right? Soothing, but not not where they are at, right? What can they actually receive? And that's a different tuning, is what I would say. Yeah.
That's so important. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
I
like
think
that.
that's like a real thing of, we know all of these amazing tools and recommendations that are so great and nourishing and oh my gosh, I know so many things that can help you and
I'm
only
here.
what that person is ready for and able to open up and receive is what is possible that day. So remembering that it's a journey and that we're looking at this moment, and we're not deciding what next week's moment will be. So potentially continuing to invite that person to try something. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, lovely. Well, that's all I've got.
Well, thank you so much, Lauren. As always, I'm really excited to continue to learn and grow with you in the year ahead. And to all of our amazing community members, thank you for being here and joining us in this conversation. And I wish you all just continued discovery on your caregiving journeys with playing with your spaces. How about tonight? Like, let's pay attention to all of our five senses in our own homes. And what can you do
Yeah.
in your physical space to soothe each of your five senses? That's my invitation. So, thank you again to you all. Have a blessed day.
Thank you. Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Shanti, Shanti.
The Sacred Window podcast is brought to you by the Center for Sacred Window Studies. You can visit us to find out more about our online training and mentoring programs, plus resources and products for and about the sacred postpartum window at www.sacredwindowstudies.com. And our music is written and performed by Sarah Emmett. You can hear more of Sarah's music by visiting www.sarahemmett.bandcamp.com.